All right, what's up, everyone? So, is everyone interested in house hacking or want to learn how it would work? Maybe see an actual deal, how it played out? So, what I want to go over in this video is what I did with house hacking, and it was with the VA loan with a house that we bought while we were in the military. So, basically, a long story short, is we were PCSing, so we were doing a move from one duty station to the next down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And what we were looking for is a single family house. Now, we knew we were going to use the VA loan, and we knew that once we were done with that duty station, whether we were moving to go to another duty station or we were getting out, we were thinking about renting it out. So what we did is when we bought this house, the actual rate that we got at that time was 3.25%, so not bad at the time. Closing cost was $3,540.50, and then this was a 30-year loan. So the good thing about the VA loan is that it allows you to come to the table with a 0% down. Now, you could get the funding fee waived if you're a disabled veteran, so that could be something to consider if you're using the VA loan once you've departed the service. Otherwise, me, when I was active duty, obviously that's not a possibility, so the funding fee was there, and then in this case we did pay closing costs. And normally, or not normally, but what you can do is if you're using the VA loan, which allows you to have 0% down, also have the funding fee waived, you can ask the seller to pay for closing costs as a part of negotiations. Whether that works out or not depends. Here, it wasn't a possibility. We could have asked, but the reason why I know it probably wouldn't have worked is because we actually got to know the seller after we purchased the property. He was the builder, and he actually lived in that area, in our actual community. What he said, we told us, was that we actually got the house because we were first to offer. We actually ended up offering asking price because at the time, properties were going off the shelf so quick in the beginning of 2020 in that area for some reason. There was another set of buyers, prospective buyers, that offered the exact same asking price just after us. And so on paper, we were both the same. And we both offered an asking price. But he went with us because we technically offered first. So just a little note, speed can sometimes get you the deal. Was that we were just quick to offer. We were a family. I think he knew because we were a VA loan. He knew that we were military. I don't think that persuaded him one way or another. Maybe he had worked with veterans before that. I'm not sure. I mentioned that because I know sometimes it could be a sticking point with agents and with sellers, because sometimes the VA loan can be a little complicated and it kind of puts sellers off and doesn't want to deal with it, and they'll deal with other buyers. What this video goes over is basically how we were able to go through that and get that 0% down. Now, another way to house hack that I want to kind of mirror this with is FHA. Even though it's not an absolute 0% down, you can go as low as 3.5% down. So you can think of FHA, and the VA loan as kind of synonymous in this sense and what they're able to do. Obviously, with the FHA loan, there is PMI, private mortgage insurance, and with the VA loan, there is not, because the VA backs a quarter of that loan, and it's just not something that's a part of that. That's kind of the actual breakdown of the numbers, what it looked like. And I would say lessons learned from it is that we had an open lot in the back, so it was a plot, it was about 3/4 of an acre, had a big front yard, the actual dwelling, and then there was a backyard. Well, it wasn't fenced, so we wanted to get a fence just to have, we had dogs that we wanted to have put back there, and so we got a fence. We had a fence company that was actually the real estate agent's husband, so we used him, built the fence, everything was great. And then an adjacent lot ended up wanting to buy the lot and develop on it. Well, we got a letter in the mail that said that they had conducted a survey and that we were encroaching on their land by however many inches, and they gave the diameters and whatnot of the actual plot. And so we went and checked it out, and sure enough, yes, we were slightly encroaching. And so we called the fence company and asked, hey, and my real estate agent really is her husband, and just, hey, just letting you know, the fence you guys built is technically on their part of the land. Please remove it, or at least move it. And of course, they didn't really want to without a huge sum of money. I talked to a couple other fencing companies in the area, and they said that they all do measurements beforehand and make sure that we're within the lines, the boundary lines, and that there's metallic pins that are 6 inches beneath the surface, and that they use metal detectors to see where the pins are located to build a fence on the appropriate land. So long story short, it was a mistake on our part not to get the survey. We just needed to get the survey. That was just something that we needed to do, and we didn't. Thankfully, we got it resolved fairly cheaply. Another fence company did it. They did it for an extremely reasonable price, moved the fence. So it ended up not being a huge issue, but I can see this being an issue on a bigger property or where it might not be as reasonably priced. So just something to consider is, I would suggest, just like an inspection, get a survey just to be absolutely sure. It costs between $500 to $1,000 maybe to get the survey. Just look into it, but it's just something that you might want to consider, kind of like you would an inspection. So it's something we learned. And then I would say now the final portion of this is, now that we got into a house with virtually no money down, we did have to bring about $3,500 to the closing table. Had we actually needed to bring 20% down like we would on a conventional load, that would have been close to $60,000 out of pocket. Now, that $60,000, yes, we would have put into the deal and it would have been equity in the deal, but it's also money that's tied up. there's no right or wrong answer here. I mean, if you wanted to leave money in the deal because that's just what you want to have that immediate equity right away, and then build through loan pay down and then appreciation to build your equity from there, that's fine. We were starting at 100% because there was no money put in the deal in the first place. So we were starting literally from the amount of the purchase price, but that's okay. We didn't have 60,000 cash laying around when we were first starting out in the military. So it allowed us to get an asset that's appreciating over time and now getting cash flow, all without putting really any of our own money into it, other than, yes, the $3,500 for the closing costs. For the fence, we've done a couple minor updates since then, but it just shows the power of being able to get into a house via house hacking that can allow you to get an asset that can pay you over time, and you didn't have to come up with a huge sum of money in order to get that asset. And so what the numbers look like recently and now is that the mortgage payment is about $1,600 a month, and the rent is about $2,500 a month. So it's about a $900 difference. And when you factor out vacancies, repairs, capital expenditures, the HOA, annual dues, all those things wrapped up in, we're still left with about $500 in actual cash flow at the end. So not bad for not having to bring any money to the deal. So if you can do this in your endeavors, whether you're a veteran as well using the VA loan, or whether you're using an FHA loan to be able to house hack in that way, in a duplex, you rent out one side and you live in the other, and hopefully you can at least cover your costs or close to it. These are all ways to house hack, and using the VA loan is just one of them. It's an incredibly powerful tool if you have access to it. I would highly recommend using it, working with a knowledgeable agent with the VA loan. That'd be incredibly beneficial to you as well. So hopefully you found this video beneficial to you, and that it helps you to see how this could actually work in real life using either the VA loan, FHA loan, if you're living in one side, renting out the other, even if you're doing conventional. These are just ways to mitigate how much you have to bring to the table to be able to house hack. Just hope you enjoyed this, and again, subscribe if you think this content is useful, and I'm going to come out with more content about future deals and rehabs we did in subsequent videos.